What's good, YouTube? Steph here. Welcome to Theta Space. Today I'm going to be watching Andy Edwards' top 10 favorite Zappa albums ranked video. Alright, so last time I did one of these, I reacted to the Sea of Tranquility, Pete Pardo's top 10 favorite Yes songs, and I didn't realize until after I'd started watching the video that I had neglected to make my own list to compare it with. This time I corrected that oversight, and I actually have my 10 favorite Zappa albums listed here. Full disclosure of Zappa's over 120, more than 60 of which were released during his lifetime. I've only got about 45 that I actually own physical copies of, and I've heard a few more. One of my 10 is one that I actually don't own a physical copy of. But anyway, here we go. I'm going to go ahead and start Andy's here and see what we got here.
Hello and welcome to this video, and in this video I'm going to be ranking the albums of Frank Zappa. In fact, I'll be ranking my favourite 10 albums by Frank Zappa. Now, anyone who watches this channel knows that I'm a huge John McLaughlin fan, but I'm also a huge Frank Zappa fan as well. And if you look back, you'll see that the longest video ever made on this channel is where I attempted to go through Zappa's discography, which was almost impossible.
That's
as we have, you know,
a Herculean task
70
there.
or 80 albums released in his lifetime, and then a further 70 or 80 released after his death. So it's quite a task, you know, to go through them all. And I thought I was done with Zappa. I thought I'd done it because I'd gone through all the albums. But a couple of people have asked me, you know, what's your top 10 albums? What's your favourite Zappa albums? Obviously, if you're coming to Zappa, you know, and you're a new listener, it's quite difficult to know where to delve in. So I thought this video could be quite useful for people. If I can give you 10 albums that are worth checking out, you know. And so, as we go through this video, it's not necessarily my favourites. It's my favourites from each era. I've tried to cover the various areas of Frank Zappa. I haven't covered them.
My list is just my 10 favorite.
I've tried to really get into the famous stuff.
The 10 that I enjoy the most.
Sort of more accessible stuff as well. So if you're a new listener, you're not, you know, trying to drag yourself through, say, the orchestral stuff he did in the 80s, you know, because that could be not the best place to start, you know. So let's start with number 10. And at number 10, I have this. Now, there's a couple of cheats here, you know, but hopefully these cheats will benefit a new listener to Frank Zappa. My number 10 is Mother Mania.
Okay, yeah,
now, this is the album
discounted that. I didn't.
That introduced me to the first incarnation of the Mothers.
I suppose as an introduction to the early Mothers, it's a good start.
Very psychedelic 1960s avant-garde experimental group that really changed the face of rock music, you know, in a number of ways. And these are the albums that the critics tend to like by Frank Zappa, because I think it's where
the only original Mothers album on my list is Absolutely Free.
They are way out. They're way beyond anything that's going on at the same time. But it doesn't musically represent what Zappa goes on to do. I think the musos amongst us, we tend to like the later Zappa albums because of the musicianship and the composition. But there's still incredible musical moments in the early Mothers, as they were called. So this is the Mothers of Invention. This album here is really covering the first three albums, and it's got some of the classic songs. It's what established Zappa. Now, those first albums would be
Freak Out, Absolutely Free, and We're Only in It for the Money.
Free, and We're Only in It for the Money. They're three essential albums, but what this does is pull all those tracks together onto one album. As I said, it's the first album I ever heard of the early Mothers, and so the programming of this, which was done by Zappa, I think is absolutely perfect, with some of his classic songs: Brown Shoes Don't Make It, Mother People, Duke of Prunes, Call Any Vegetable, The Idiot Bastard Son on side 1, and then It Can't Happen Here, You're Probably Wondering Why I'm Here, Who Are the Blame Police, Plastic People, Hungry Freaks Daddy.
Yeah, it's got pretty much everything. It's got pretty much everything essential from Absolutely Free on it.
Songs of early Zappa.
I can understand. This is a good one to
Zappa band, the
Introduce
Mothers.
somebody
Right.
to the early
So
Mothers.
what have I got at number 9? Okay. Well, I'll just check over here. I've got my list of my top 10. So at number 9 we have You Are What You Is. Okay. Frank Zappa starts off as a very
That's on my list as well.
artist. As he actually develops his own form of commercial music, and he releases some blockbuster albums, which I've included. It's usually the place where most people start. These albums are accessible, but they're still musicianally brilliant, compositionally brilliant.
Musically,
there's quite a lot of humour on them. There's a huge dose of virtuosity. This is really covering the early 80s band, which featured Ike Willis, Ray White, Steve Vai, Tommy Mars.
Ray
Arthur
White,
Barrow.
absolutely my favorite
Usually Chad
Zappa
Rackham
vocalist.
on drums, but this one's got David Logerman on drums. It's his only appearance on a Zappa album. I think it's probably on some live stuff as well somewhere. This album is absolutely incredible in its density.
Yeah, I especially like the
short tracks. It's made up of. So if
the-
we start with
the
side
sequence
one,
that goes
Teenage
from
Wind, which is
Society
3
Pages
minutes,
through
then Husband,
Conehead
Your
is-
Husband, which is 2 minutes, then Doreen, which is 4 minutes. So it gives you a flavour of what Zappa's like when he's making these actually quite catchy commercial little tunes, but also Zappa manages to wind them all together so they almost feel like one track, especially side 2. Side 2 is one of the great moments in the Zappa discography for me, with Society Pages, I'm a Beautiful Guy, Beauty Knows No Pain, Charlie's Enormous Mouth, Any Downers and Conehead.
Yeah.
That whole side is like a little epic. You know, when I did my prog epics, I'm sure a couple of
And
Zappa
side 3
epics got
also.
in there. But that is also
You
a
Are
prog
What You
epic,
Is
but
through,
it's also delineated
through Suicide
little
Chunk.
tracks.
Yeah.
This is quite incredible. For those of you who are interested in the sort of Steve Vai insane guitar part stuff, there's a track called Sinister Footwear where he mirrors Zappa's doing an improvised solo, and I think Vai mirrors it, and I think Ed Mann mirrors it with on Vibes. That is an example of the sort of virtuosity that we would get with this early 80s band when Vai was in it. So that's at number 9. Brilliant album. Right, so what have we got at number 8? Well, I really didn't want to represent this band too much because it is my favourite of the Zappa bands, which is I call them the 70s funky Zappa band with George Duke.
73, 74, yes.
I've already got an album in
My
the
favourite
list.
too.
I wasn't going to put another one in, but I thought I need to put a live album in somewhere, and this is one of the greatest live albums ever made.
Yep, that's on my list too.
The Mothers, Roxy and Elsewhere.
I've got 3 or 4 by this band
It
on
really shows off that thing that
on
Zappa
my
does,
list.
where you've got live stuff, but you've also got live stuff where I think he's overdubbed in and just edited it and embellished it. This is quite incredible. It was
I've got
the soundtrack of a film that he was going to make.
This one, the Helsinki concert, you can't do that on stage anymore, Volume 2, and One Size Fits All. Those are the ones that made my list.
The George Duke Band, as I call it,
Napoleon Murphy Brock
different
Band.
to the early Mothers. The early Mothers is very angular, very modernistic, very rooted in the sort of classical tradition, and the virtuosity comes from that sort of classical tradition, modern classical, albeit. With this band, I believe he was really influenced by the Mahavishnu Orchestra and also things like Stevie Wonder and things like that.
Like his,
and you suddenly get this funky, earthy jazz virtuosity.
Yeah, the most jazz fusion-y, electric jazz fusion sort of Return to Forever-ish.
So when we're talking fusion bands, which is what this is, it's jazz fusion here. Mahavishnu Orchestra, Weather Report, Headhunters, 11th House, Return to Forever, and the George Duke Rocks in Elsewhere band. And this is I think this is 1973, around about 73, 74. So it's right in the mix when all these other fusion bands are doing their thing, and in terms of other ones, he's ahead of the game. He's a pioneer when it comes to jazz fusion. But this is earthy, it's raw, it's also virtuoso, incredible soloing, absolutely one of the greatest live albums ever made.
I'm guessing Hot Rats is going to be on his list. It didn't make mine.
Number 7, right? It's one of the first Zappa albums I ever got, right? So I think that's why it's in. It's also one of his biggest sellers, and I would say it's probably his most commercial album. It's the one I think they sold 1 million copies. And
Ship arriving too late to save a Downing
like
Witch.
that,
No.
Shake
Oh,
Your
Shake Your
Booty.
Booty. Yeah, didn't make my list.
Shaky Booty's got some really funny tracks. If you want to hear the really offensive stuff, it's got Broken Hearts Are for Assholes. It's got Bobby Brown on here. So we have all that on here. But it's also compositionally really incredible. And on tracks like Rat Tamago, you hear his xenochrony approach to music, where it's basically got a drum part and a bass part from two separate tracks and just join them together. And this technique was very influential on sort of hip hop and 80s music and program music, electronic music. It's got some great guitar solos on it, and it seems like side one is sort of his very commercial stuff, and then side two is more experimental. Side three again very commercial, and then side four contains Wild Love and Yo Mama, which are basically like one suite, which occupies the whole side. So you get one of the.
I never considered those two as being
It's got one of the great Zappa
a single composition. So not in the same way that side two of You Are What You Is, or side three of You Are What You Is.
Is a good starting place, because some of the Zappa stuff is very avant-garde. This is a really good place to start. Right. So what do we have at number 6? Well, in the early days, after Zappa's had the early mothers of Invention, he releases a number of albums which are far more experimental. I'm thinking Lumpy Gravy, Uncle Meat, Weasel Was Ripped My Flesh, and this album, Burnt Weenie Sandwich. Now, when I thought of what album would I pick as my favourite,
also not on my list, but
that run
it's
of
a good
albums,
record.
Straight away I thought, well, it's Uncle Meat, because that's the masterpiece. But I think for me, this one is even greater. It's more coherent as an album, slightly. I mean, we really are.
I'm inclined to agree.
Really different masterpieces here. It's a little bit more coherent, and it's just a little bit. It covers the jazz thing and the classical thing really well. Incredible cover, and it's got Wine Port and Lemon Juice on, which is a sort of doo-wop track, which also points to Ruben and the Jets, which is a really important album.
Yeah,
and
it's a cover that Zappa didn't write.
Little House I Used to Live In, which is one of the great moments for Frank Zappa, I think.
That's a good one.
Point to one track of this sort of second era, I'd definitely be going for that as my favourite track, Little House I Used to Live In. It's absolutely incredible. So, what do we have at number 5? Well, after that incarnation of the Mothers, we get the Flo and Eddie incarnation of the Mothers, which is my least favourite incarnation of the Zappa band. So I thought, what shall I put in from that era? And it would probably be 200 Motels, a soundtrack, to the film, which is great.
That, or I'd say Chunga's Revenge.
Not one of my favourite Zappa albums. But around that period, he made this, Hot Rats, which really is one of my favourite albums. I would put this as a pioneering fusion album as well. It's made in 1970, so it's pre-Mahavishnu, and he really is laying the groundwork for jazz fusion here as much as anything.
I understand this was a huge and influential album, but I'd actually rather listen to the Grand Wazoo.
Absolutely beautiful. Peaches on Regalia.
Peaches on Regalia is good.
Some of his most beautiful melodies, and on tracks like Gumbo Variations and Willie the Pimp, we get some of his great guitar solos, some of his great.
I'd rather listen to Grand Wazoo or Waka Jawaka.
Features Captain Beefheart, who's really important in the Zappa story, and so I thought we need some Beefheart in there as well. So that's what we get on this album.
Yeah, absolutely for Beefheart, Zappa and Beefheart, I'd go with Bongo Fury, which is still the George Duke Napoleon Murphy Brock.
I've cheated.
Cheated again? What'd you do?
In the late 70s. Zappa had a band which is represented by Shaky Booty. I often call it the Terry Bozzio band. But before that, he released a run of albums which are amongst my favourite Zappa albums.
Why didn't you call the 73-75 one the Chester Thompson band?
And they've got so many masterpieces on.
Now, you're a drummer, Mr. Edwards.
To be released as, I think, a 4-disc box set, and
Leather.
Warner Brothers wouldn't release it,
so
we left Warner Brothers, and this is that's how it went. You know, he ended up going on a radio station and playing all the tracks so everyone could, you know, record it and hear them in their original form.
Something like get your tape
much
machines
later
ready
on,
here.
He was able to release that album, that box set, which is called Leather. I know it says Lather, but it's pronounced Leather.
Yeah, it's got the umlauts over the A. Leather.
If you buy this, which is like a 3-disc set, it really covers some of the greatest tracks off those 3 albums.
Well, yeah. 4 albums,
it's
I thought.
just full of brilliant stuff. And also, I haven't
4
really
albums.
Put in any of the actual
Sleep Dirt,
orchestral work. I haven't put
Orchestral favorites,
in, which is brilliant. I haven't put
Sleep
the Yellow
Dirt,
Shark that nearly made it.
Studio
But
Town,
this
Zappa
does
in New
contain
York,
some of his
and
orchestral stuff.
Orchestral favorites.
To be honest, the album Orchestral Favorites,
Leather
I
was
think,
split into
is
those
my
4.
favourite orchestral album he ever made because it's just got that rock and roll psychedelic.
Now, Sleep Dirt's the one from
this has
from
got
this
like
that
page on it. It's got like
that made my list.
a whole bunch of really incredible. I'm looking through it now. So what do I pick on here? But of course, it's got Gregory Peccary on it, and Gregory Peccary is
Sleep
like
Dirt and Zappa in New York are the two albums that made my list. That were part of Leather.
The Adventures of Gregory Peccary, which is a whole.
And Zappa in New York is the one I actually don't own a copy of.
Everything from sort of rock, jazz, doo-wop to classical, avant-garde.
For Gregory Peccary alone, I almost picked Studio 10 over Sleep Dirt. But,
Zappa has a sort of philosophy.
Overall, I like the material on Sleep Dirt
certain
better.
Ideas sort of appear over and over again. I'll talk about that in a bit. But here, on Gregory Peccary, I really think that really underpins it. It's like a central track, monster track in the Zappa discography.
Yeah, on a different day, I might pick Studio 10 over Sleep Dirt.
Well,
okay, what's number 3?
We have to represent his guitar playing. Zappa is one of the greatest
guitar
guitarists of all time.
Or shut up and play your guitar.
I believe, you know, not straight away, but as time went on, he developed a way of improvising which is equal to the achievements of John Coltrane and Miles Davis. And for me, he really did it on this album.
Shut up and play your guitar.
Yeah.
That one didn't make my list. Neither did guitar.
It was a triple album. It's a double disc here. And you'd think that
well,
you know, 3 albums worth of guitar solos.
It was released as 3 separate single LPs, as I understand it.
This is one of the greatest jazz albums.
Just like Joe's Garage was released as a single LP, and parts 2 and 3 acts 2 and 3 were released as a double album.
What the musicians are doing. Right, at number 2, we are now pretty much down to my favourite Zappa albums, I think. So at number 2, I've got Ship Too Late to Save a Drowning Witch.
Yeah, not on my list either.
Zappa is most commercial and catchy. You've got to hear Valley Girl, which was a hit record for him, and he's on side 1. Side 1's incredible, but side 2 of this album, Drowning Witch, Envelopes, and Teenage Prostitute, I think that's my favourite epic by Zappa. That track there, he does absolutely everything that Zappa does, except maybe the electronic, you know, Synclavier type thing.
Yeah. Zappa said that Drowning Witch was the one that was so hard to play that none of his live bands ever got it perfect.
And you really hear it on this album. It's beautifully recorded. Side 2 is a mixture of live and studio, which is a thing that only Zappa really does, I think. This is absolutely amazing. So that's what I've got at number 2.
Okay.
So
what's number 1?
You know, if you want to go out and buy a Zappa album now, I've never bought one before, and you want to own one Zappa album, it would be this.
Yes.
One size fits all.
It's not my number 1, but it is up there. Yeah.
It says what it says on the album.
Yes.
Sorry, it does what it says on the album. One size fits all. This, I think, was Zappa designing an album to introduce you, the new listener, to his universe. And what do we get on the back? We get that universe. We get this star map with all this conceptual things laid out, right? On the front we have Zappa's Genesis story, right?
At the sofa,
this
yes.
is the hand of God with the cigar, right? Looking at the first thing that he created in space, which is this sofa floating in space. We get the story about the sofa on this album. You know, we get Evelyn the Modified Dog, which all goes into that sort of conceptual continuity. But it also contains possibly the greatest album performance of any.
We don't really get the story of the sofa there. The story of the sofa was relayed in the Flo and Eddie
what is possibly
band.
my favourite Zappa track. Inca Roads.
Yeah, Inca Roads is
a masterpiece. So if you only want to listen to one Zappa
Inca Roads
track,
is
so you never
excellent.
listen to Zappa and someone says, well, what's Zappa like? Go and listen to Inca Roads. It's just incredible. So that's what I've got at number 1 in my top 10 Zappa albums. So I hope this has been of interest to you. I hope it has been enlightening. If you want to go back and now watch my huge epic on all the albums of Zappa, this might make a little bit of sense. I'm sure.
I don't know if I could spare the time for that.
But anyway, that's
what
the
is it,
video.
like
That's
6
my
hours?
top 10. If you liked it, like it. If you want to subscribe, please subscribe. And most importantly, put something in the comments. Put your albums. I'm sure you're going to argue, where's so-and-so? Where's the Grand Wazoo? Where's the Grand Wazoo? I know people are going to say it. I know. But it's not
I'm
them.
not.
Sorry.
No. I would understand why you would pick Hot Rats over the Grand Wazoo, but I'd rather listen to the Grand
Post
Wazoo.
your favourites. And if you want more on Zappa, I'm a huge Zappa fan, and I would love to get into Zappa in the same way as I've gotten to the Mahavishnu on this channel. So anyway, I'm done. I'll see you on the next video. Thanks for watching.
All right, peace. Yeah, so yeah, my top 10, working from the top down. I got the Helsinki concert, You Can't Do That on Stage Anymore, Volume 2. Volume 2, it's the only one that's of the series that's a complete concert, although I learned that he kind of cheated and mixed songs from the matinee and the evening show of the same date. But yeah, that one's got a lot of the same repertoire as the Roxy and Elsewhere album, but it's got just my favorite band. It's like the Roxy band stripped down by a couple of members. And my number 2 is The Best Band You Never Heard in Your Life from the '88 tour. There are 3 live albums from that tour, but I prefer that one because it's got for me, the best mix of songs on it. One Size Fits All, my number 3, yeah. He talked about it. Overnight Sensation. I'm surprised he didn't cover that one or Apostrophe. But of the 2, I just like the songs on Overnight Sensation better, especially like Montana. Montana is just awesome. My number 5 is You Can't Do That on Stage Anymore, Volume 1. The successive volumes in the series after the Helsinki concert, which was, of course, one whole concert by the 74 band, kind of focused on particular bands or eras, but I like the kind of overall. It's like where Mr. Edwards had Mother Mania as his introduction there to the early Mothers. You Can't Do That on Stage Anymore. Volume 1 is a good overview of pretty much all the eras of Zappa, and it's got just absolutely awesome live version of Don't Eat the Yellow Snow that includes the ending part, the last part, Rollo, which was not on the album version. My number 6 is Absolutely Free. Of the 3 initial Mothers albums, that is my number 1. I can pull this down. Sleep Dirt, representing the 4 albums that were split, that Leather was split into. I think my favorite one on that there is The Ocean is the Ultimate Solution, and now I can't remember which one. Was it Sleep Dirt? I think it's Sleep Dirt is the one that's a duet between him and another guitarist whose name eludes me right now. Roxy and Elsewhere was on Mr. Edwards' list. It's on my list as well, just because I just love that band. That had an extra drummer and a couple extra horn players, but otherwise it's the core band from the Helsinki concert, which is Brock, Duke, Fowler, Thompson, Ruth Underwood, and Zappa himself. My number 9 is You Are What You Is. Mr. Edwards said pretty much all that needs to be said about that. And my number 10 is Zappa in New York, which is another album that Leather was split into, basically all the live material from a particular show, with Don Pardo as an MC. So that's my top 10 there. And, well, what do you think? Anybody, what's your top 10? Which Zappa albums really turn your crank? Let me know in the comments. Also, please hit subscribe and the notification bell. They don't cost anything. I'll be back again on Wednesday with a review or ranking or something. I haven't planned that far ahead yet. And Saturday with another reaction. That's it. Steph out. Peace.